Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind Podcast. I am your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Hey.
So today, we are finally getting to the Black Queen, episode 10 in the season finale for House of the Dragon season 1. It's been a busy week here, as Mike and I are both in education, and it's nearing the end of the first semester, so grades are due, and reports are due, and fantasy still, as Daniel Green must say, must flow.
Yes.
So, we are diving in here, getting into our thoughts on the season finale, as well as just our thoughts on the first season as a whole. All right, before we get into anything else, I'm going to give out the typical reminders. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram as well, which is @fantasyrewindpod. Or if you feel like using the Bird app, you can get at us on Twitter, which is @fantasyrewind. All right, without any farther ado, let's hop into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, episode 10, The Black Queen. Yeah, so overall thoughts from me on this episode was hope crushed by sadness. I think we saw some really great character interaction and almost like it was like a finale of development for some of our characters. And there was so much hope with it, and the ending crushed it all. What were your thoughts, Dylan?
That look on Aemon's face was like, oh no, what have I done?
And then the look on Rhaenyra's face.
Yeah, that look on Rhaenyra's face was just pure hatred. She was like, it's about to go down. Mm-hmm. And so, like, all in all, though, I thought this episode was good. I really liked how it contrasts with episode 9. Because episode 9 was all about the Greens, everything they're doing to prepare for their, like, takeover of the throne. Whereas episode 10 here was all about the Blacks and everything they're doing in their preparation to go after the throne. And whether there's going to be a civil war or not, whether Rhaenyra is going to submit or not to Aegon. Mm-hmm. And by the end, we know this is war.
Yep.
And so, all in all, I thought it was a good episode. I did not feel like the tugging on my heartstrings when Lucerys died, but I felt a little bit for Rhaenyra when she turned around and looked at that face. Yeah.
Yeah. It was all for Rhaenyra. Like, honestly, Luke here, I could care less about. No offense to his actor or anything else. We just never got enough of him to really make it a meaningful death. You know, It was all about Rhaenyra.
It was meaningful in that it has major implications for our characters that we do care about. But as far as, like you said, Mike, Lucerys, or Luke, as he's called in the show here, like, I'm sorry, but I don't care about you that much. But yeah, let's not jump too far ahead there, although I know we both want to talk about that part.
I know. I'll start it up here.
Yeah, go for it, man.
So we kind of come in, and we're in the heart of Dragonstone towards the map, and Luke's in there, and we saw more of him this episode than we have all season long, and the reason was the ending, right?
Right.
But he tells his mom, I don't want Driftmark, I don't want this responsibility, I get seasick, like, I'm not a good pick. And Rhaenyra's talking about how, at first she was scared, and then she realized that it was her duty. And Luke says, well, you're perfect. And she's like, oh, no, I'm far from perfect. And we could all agree with that. But we never really got that side of her growing up, that she was, like, scared or nervous about having the crown or the throne. It always just seemed like something she wanted. So I was a little like, what you're saying now doesn't quite match how you were portrayed when you were younger, but at least now, like, you're looking back in that retrospect and you're seeing it, and it just shows maturity for her character, right?
Right, and I think that's what it is I think, like you said, when it was a different actress portraying her when she was younger, she didn't play it like she was afraid of the responsibility, that it wasn't something she wanted. She played it like she wanted it, and we were questioning, like, why does she want it so much?
Yeah.
Because it's brought nothing but pain to her father. And so we look at this, and I think it is with the hindsight of maturity that she's able to look back and realize, maybe I was afraid of what was going on. Maybe I was afraid of what this responsibility meant. And that's probably why I acted out, or that's why I, did some of the things that I did, and I think that it does show growth for Rhaenyra as a character from where she was played in the beginning versus how she is played now, to recognize that and address it.
Then we have Rhaenys giving the message to Daemon and Rhaenyra about King Viserys' death, Aemon being crowned king. Daemon does obviously this is like for Rhaenyra's just trying to process like what my dad's dead and like all this is happening, and she's also pregnant, and
right, we didn't even bring that up.
Yeah, and it's just all like coming in on her, whereas Daemon's immediately like, oh, so you just show up here to tell us this, Rhaenys? Are you treacherous? Did you not fight them? Did you not do this? And it's like, she's like, excuse me? I flew here to like give you this message out of goodwill and out of the love of my brother, and how close our houses are. But I was just like, Daemon's just lashing out.
Yeah, so Daemon definitely was feeling the loss of his brother here. They might not have always gotten along, but they were still family. And you could see that when they did visit Viserys and the rest of the royal family in episode 8. But I really did like how Rhaenys addressed like why she didn't attack Aegon and Alicent in this episode. Like she said, it's not my place to deliver the opening blows of this war. If there's to be war, it should be dealt by you guys, because you're the ones that want it. And I was like, I didn't necessarily agree with the choice at the time, but it makes sense that, if blows are to come about, that Rhaenys shouldn't be the one to decide that. It should be Rhaenyra. That she should decide that it's going to be war and not a peaceful transition into Aegon being king.
Yeah. And I do think in this episode, Daemon has a really significant part that's kind of underscored by his lack of dialogue with other characters and like making connections. It's his actions that speak so loud to his feelings and everything else that's going on with him. And I feel like we could almost do an entire episode on his emotional progression and why that could be. But him lashing out at Rhaenys right now is definitely because of the grief for his brother. And obviously this causes a lot of stress, and Rhaenyra kind of goes into labor.
Premature labor, yeah.
Very premature labor, as the maester's like, oh, this shouldn't be happening right now. And so she's in her room, like on the balcony, just like dealing with this, and Daemon's at the map meeting with all the lords and stuff of Dragonstone and all their allies that they have there, and planning out like what they're going to do. And, even though she calls for Daemon, and even though like they're like, hey, should you be with your wife right now? He just ignores them. And if you were questioning why this might be, just think back to what's happened in Daemon's life. Right. He lost, arguably, probably the first love of his life. We don't really know how in depth their feelings were, but he lost his one of his loves to childbirth. He also lost his sister-in-law to childbirth. Like, he's had a lot of loss to this. And right now his wife is having this childbirth that shouldn't be happening. And so he's probably just like, I can't deal with this. And then also on top of that, you have his brother dying. The one person he probably did really care about outside of Rhaenyra.
And so I think just to underscore what you said there, Mike, as well, is that Daemon has never been somebody to play the Game of Thrones. He's never been somebody who like worries about politicking that much. He's always been, like you said, a man of action. And so, what does he do when Rhaenyra's incapable of doing it? Daemon steps up and he's taking action. And he's like, this might not be what Rhaenyra wants, but this is how I think it should be done, so we're going to do it this way. And we see this even more when Jacaerys goes up to go see his mom, and she tells him, she's like, Jace, we're not going to do anything until I'm down there, I know Daemon is like gathering our allies and everything, but we're not going to war until I make the decision to go to war. Jacaerys comes down, tells Daemon this, and Daemon just like dismisses him basically. And it's like, go back to your mom, pup. Daddy's got this.
And then, as there's a little more tension there between them, he's like, come, I'm going to show you the meaning of loyalty.
Yeah.
And so while Rhaenyra is having this miscarriage, it's honestly very bloody, very gruesome. She's okay. Thankfully, but obviously the child is
right. The child dies,
dead. Daemon takes Jacaerys and has two of the two Kingsguard that are there, and he like basically says, so who are you loyal to? Are you loyal to Rhaenyra, or are you loyal to Aegon? You need to tell me right now. If you're loyal to Aegon, I'll make your death swift, and you'll be good. If you're loyal to Rhaenyra, you need to renew your vows to her. And if you do decide later on, like, oh, I'm gonna be treacherous, you'll die screaming.
Yeah, he's like, I'll kill you slowly. You won't have that quick, swift death of getting your head cut in half or off.
Yeah. And so and his dragon shows up right behind him like, oh yeah, let's make this decision, guys. I would love to have a snack right now.
It's like no pressure at all. Make the right choice.
And obviously they re-swear to Rhaenyra.
But they do it through Jace by proxy. And that's why Daemon brought Jace with him, was to be like, okay, you want to be the prince of Dragonstone? Step up, do your duties as the prince.
Yeah, and he did this too because there would be questions, right?
Right.
As there were in King's Landing, when the Hand ordered them to go slay Rhaenyra.
Yeah, right? Okay.
Oh, man, what a tool.
Glad we didn't have much of him in this episode. We had him a little bit. But...
Oh, well, yeah, and I wish there had been just a little bit more Daemon in that one. Anyway, so Daemon and Rhaenyra basically after this go into weeping, and they're burning their child. It's like one thing after another right now. You have her dad, his brother. You have the baby.
Their child, their unborn child.
You have this whole situation with the king, like people not honoring, the rightful succession. And it's all like culminating here. And I was really surprised that this scene turned from such sadness to hope. And the music really, really lent itself to that, because while they're grieving, one of the Kingsguard, who we met last episode from King's Landing, comes to Rhaenyra and offers her
Viserys' crown.
And he swears to her.
And I thought it was so funny, just to contrast what he did with what the other Kingsguard on Dragonstone did. They had to basically have it twisted out of them to re-swear to Rhaenyra. Whereas he came in bearing the crown and was saying his vows to her as he was walking up and kneeling down. It felt almost, like you said, like a very hopeful, uplifting scene to contrast with the previous scene, which was Rhaenyra bandaging up her dead child and burning it herself, rather than having any of the Silent Sisters take in that duty.
Yeah, and so it was a very different coronation. Everyone bent the knee except for Rhaenys, and we kind of get why later on. But she even looks on, proud, you know what, I didn't do this, but you are. I kind of got that silent exchange a little bit between them. Yeah,
something that was a little funny, though, I thought, is that at this point in the episode, Rhaenys had come in, she delivered her message, she's like, don't attack me, I'm giving you guys a heads up, I didn't even have to do that. And
she's sticking
because
around.
She still has it out almost for Rhaenyra and Daemon, because she blames them for the death of her son, or the supposed death of her son. But you have to realize that Rhaenys isn't necessarily loyal to Rhaenyra at this point in the episode.
No.
It takes Rhaenyra acting like a queen throughout the rest of this episode to get Rhaenys to formally acknowledge her as her queen, and to say, I'm not just going to be this passive third party. I'm going to step in and be an active ally and a valued ally to you. And she shows herself very valuable in this episode.
And it also took her conversation with her husband before that happened, too. So we'll get to that one in a little bit, though. But So now we go in, and they're planning it in Dragonstone. And wow, look at this. The map can be lit.
It's lit. And it was really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. If only the Baratheons knew that later on.
Maybe they just were lazy and didn't care. It was Stannis. He's like, I don't care. I'll use the dark version.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. There was definitely a little tension here between Daemon and Rhaenyra in the decision making. And it almost felt like Daemon was just like, I'm going to make the decisions here. I'm the man. And Rhaenyra's like, I'm the queen. That was kind of the back and forth I kind of got between them. And some of the lords were like, I don't know what to do here. And this was kind of the problem, right? This has sort of been this issue hanging over Rhaenyra's head, is that she isn't a man, so people won't follow her. But she's actually making sane choices and decisions.
Yeah, she's making level-headed choices, not rushing to war.
Yeah. And she shows her knowledge and her understanding of the kings and the people who rule.
Yeah.
And Daemon does not have that. And that's very apparent. He's just like, I'm going to go treaty with this person and yeah, whatever. And it's like, I don't know how that treaty's going to go.
The treaty's going to go, swear to Rhaenyra or I'm going to kill you. What do you say?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So this is when the Hand shows up with a 3-headed green dragon banner.
Yeah,
on
I
his
saw
little
that.
dinghy. What a spit in the face,
Yeah.
right?
They're swagger jacking the Targaryens now.
Yeah. And obviously, Rhaenyra shows up with her dragon as Daemon's just like standing over the 2 Kingsguard, and the Hand's got like 4 or 6 Kingsguard with him. But Rhaenyra shows up with her dragon, and I was just like,
so
yes.
Can I just say
showing him power
how
move.
much I loved this scene because of the contrast with the scene from earlier in the season when Daemon had held Dragonstone and was proclaiming himself, Lord of Dragonstone or King of Dragonstone or whatever. And Rhaenyra went with the Hand of the King to Dragonstone to get Daemon to hand back over the dragon egg that he had taken. And so the contrast on that bridge with Daemon on one side, Hand of the King on the other. Rhaenyra was with the Hand of the King earlier in the season. Now she's on the opposite side looking at the Hand of the King with Daemon. And I just thought the contrast between those 2 scenes was lovely.
Yeah. If Daemon had just been able to do what he was going to do at the beginning of the season, none of this would have been happening.
That's so true, actually.
Just, throwing that out there. But the Hand shows up and he's offering terms for everything to basically switch peacefully. Obviously, Rhaenyra would have to step down from her claim as queen and acknowledge Aemon or bend the knee, but
Aegon.
Pretty much everything that had been Aegon, yes, sorry. Everything that had been set up beforehand would be acknowledged, everything would go, all their kids would be in positions of power, yada, yada, yada. Daemon's just like, I would rather feed my children to dragons than do this, than have them serve your usurper. And obviously, instead of saying that, which is like, I wanted Rhaenyra to say that, and Daemon like pulled out his sword, he was like, I'm going to take your head. Rhaenyra's just like, no. You guys will get my answer tomorrow. And it's definitely going to be an interesting tomorrow.
I know. Tomorrow will be the opening of season 2. Ooh, can't wait.
In 2 years. Or maybe, I hope they don't do a time jump. Like, I really would like to see like how that message is portrayed.
I'll tell you right now, I do not think they'll do another big time jump. At least not yet.
I know George R.R. Martin had said that he wanted more time jumps. He was actually the only person who wanted more time jumps. I saw a little snippet there of that. But Rhaenyra does like the level-headed thing. It's just like, I will give you your answer tomorrow. Because honestly, like while this would take away her being the queen, like she says, this will be better for the realm. There's not going to be war. Everything that they worked for outside of her being queen would be acknowledged, and everything would be going back to like a tense peace, but peace.
Now, the one thing though is that would all be true if they held to their bargain. And so there's no guarantee the Hand would not continue to plot, would not continue to go after her and her children and just kill them in their sleep.
But they know, like, he would have to know that the minute he struck towards them at all in any way, shape, or form, it would just be war. It would break all of it. And then the Queen Rhaenyra and all of them would have this on their side. Like, hey, one, the kingdom, they're a bunch of oath breakers. They promised us this, and it's all been publicly acknowledged. They go and kill our brother, or, this kid. Like, well, I guess that's where it would be really gray, because they would have to have proof that they did it. Yeah, that's a good point, Dylan. Anyway, but Rhaenyra is taking the high road here and just like, I'm going to think about this and what's best for the kingdom. We kind of get a scene later on here where Daemon's like really upset about her even considering this. And then they clear the room. Her and Rhaenyra are talking right by the fireplace.
And then this is probably the most uncomfortable moment in the episode for a lot of people that they talked about.
Yeah, and I think with this scene, because Daemon does end up choking Rhaenyra here, and some people have been making like sexual comments about it, and it's nothing like that. No. And honestly, I think it's Daemon unable to contain his emotions and he's just lashing out. And because he doesn't know about the Song of Ice and Fire, which is like been handed down from Targaryen ruler to Targaryen ruler, right? And so that means that Daemon was never going to be in power. He was never meant to rule. He was never deemed worthy in that sense. And he wasn't even trusted enough by his brother to be told.
So I think like the grief paired with this like acknowledgement of ignorance on his part is what makes Daemon snap and start, choking Rhaenyra. And like, there's not really an excuse for this because it is what it is. It's domestic violence going on right there from Daemon to Rhaenyra.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not done in a sexual manner. I mean, whatever you want to do is behind your closed doors or out in the front of other people for your own pleasure is up to you. But this was done to harm. This was not done for pleasure and done out of frustration. Kind of like a callback to the impotent Daemon that we saw earlier in the season as well, like where he would get frustrated about something and lash out with violence. And that's exactly what he was doing here, kind of regressing back to his more wild side.
Yes, but as you said, there really was no justification for it. I was just trying to dive into why was it happening in the first place. Because I don't think when he released her, I don't think he was doing it to get it even close to death or anything like that. It was really just it was him almost trying to grasp at power for, just to have control over the situation because he had.
And I don't think that Daemon ever actually wanted to hurt or kill Rhaenyra there. It was more of a loss of control. Let me take control of what I can take control of. Oh my God, what am I doing? Let me let you go. And, go back to trying to be this new man that I've forged for myself.
Yeah, and she realizes too, she's like, oh, you never knew. And he just walks away. And then we kind of switch here. Corlys is alive, and he is now in Dragonstone. And this is actually a really touching moment between Corlys and Rhaenys. Corlys is I didn't do the right thing. I never did the right thing. I was trying to hold on to this idea of the crown and power, and I shouldn't have. And Rhaenys is, kind of agreeing with him. And then when he's just we'll just declare for no one, she's like, well, actually, we're going to have to probably get involved in this because our grandchildren are involved in this.
And I think it's really funny, though, how Rhaenys was like, you're right, but now I agree with what you were saying before. We got to do this. We have to get involved.
Well, now we're too far
in to pull back now.
Yeah. And she does talk up the queen, saying that she's the only sane one in there. Everyone else wants war, and she is, the only one who's trying to make some good decisions.
So Corlys also is like, should have never gotten in bed with that girl. And then Rhaenys is like, that girl is the only reason we're not at war right now. That girl is making good decisions and holding the realm together and putting the realm first. She's acting like a queen. We need to support her now.
Yeah. And so you have Corlys the next day kind of coming down into their meeting and, after some banter back and forth and whatnot, basically says they declare for Queen Rhaenyra. And they even come up with a plan, here's what we could do for you. We can make sure that the Red Keep isn't getting any supplies from the sea, and Rhaenys is like, and I'll make sure that no one messes with that blockade with my dragon, which she might need some backup. We have the princes then kind of stepping up, and they're going to fly to treat with Lord Baratheon, Stark, and the Eyrie, right?
So Jace is going to go up to the Eyrie and then continue on north, going up north to Winterfell to the Starks.
And he has someone going with him.
So I don't know. I think
it's betrothed, because there was 3 dragons that left.
Yeah, well, I think Daemon went to the Riverlands to go and do that, and then Lucerys went down to Storm's End to treat with the Baratheons as well.
Yeah. And we don't see any more of...
we don't see any more of Jace this episode. But we do see... Let's go to Daemon first.
Daemon... Well, and that's why I didn't think he left yet, because he instead went to the Dragon Pits. Because they mentioned... This was a big thing throughout the episode that they mentioned, and I almost skipped over this, actually, is that, they're like, we have more dragons. We
have the superior firepower.
And Rhaenyra's like, well, we don't have riders for multiple of those. And we have never been in a conflict. None of our dragons have, except for yours. And which is a good point, because the Green's dragons, while most of theirs also haven't been in conflict, obviously Aemon's has.
Vhagar has.
A lot of conflict.
As evidenced by how old and ugly he is from all the scars and battle material that's all over him. All over her. Yeah, I forgot Vhagar's a woman. A female dragon, rather.
Yes. And so it's really interesting with that conversation. And Daemon even says, it's very hard to be a dragon killer, but dragons can kill dragons. And that's where their discussion arises, like, well, we have more dragons, but we don't have enough riders. So that's going to, that'll go into my predictions, but it's going to be interesting. I happened to look up the free dragons, the ones that are, he said, nesting on the island, but not under anyone's kind of control. So there's the cannibal, sheep stealer, and, oh man, there was a third one. I don't remember the third one's name. But Daemon ends up going to see Jaharis's old dragon. Was that Vmax? No. Vermithor?
It might be Vermithor. I can't remember.
Anyway, yeah, I had written down Vermithor because I looked it up at one point, but I don't remember if that's right or not. Sorry, listeners. But anyway, he goes into the dragon pit. He's singing to this giant dragon, and I kind of wanted your input on this, Dylan, because as I said, don't even claim to be an expert or very knowledgeable about Game of Thrones lore. Why did he go into the dragon pit and singing to Vermithor if he can't be his rider, right? Because, he already has his dragon.
Yeah, he has his own dragon, but I think what he was doing is he was singing to the dragon to kind of, lure it out from its sleep, basically. Because it's a massive beast, you see, right? And no one has ridden this dragon since King Jaehaerys. And that's been a long while. So I'm not positive on this part, but I'm pretty sure it was to kind of wake it out of a hibernation of sorts. You know what I mean? To try to lure it back to activity.
That makes sense. Okay, I guess we'll see with that. So let's kind of clip here the two princes and the third person. I don't think it was Daemon, because I do think Daemon was doing this during that time. I think it might have been maybe Jaehaerys' betrothed, who has a dragon as well. And they're flying, the three of them are flying out. And it follows Luke as he goes to Storm's Landing, which aptly named, right? It's storming something fierce. He lands and we see Vhagar. She's there, so that means Aemon's there.
So I just want to pause here for a second and just say how awesome Vhagar looked at this scene when when Lucerys was walking up there. Luke looks up and he just sees the sky crackle with lightning and this gigantic dragon silhouetted in the distance there, and it just looked really awesome. Loved that visual.
It did. So Lord Baratheon, we get our meeting of him. And he is a slightly less than honorable man, I would say.
I'd say it looks that way.
He cares more about what the two sides are offering him than
any previous oath.
Yeah, correct. He's like, I don't care about my dad's oath. It's not my oath. And it's also obvious he can't read.
Yeah. He's frustrated by that, too, that he has to demonstrate that in front of the princes.
Yes. So after Lord Baratheon's basically like, yeah, you guys aren't offering me anything. You can just leave. Aemon's like, no, I want your eye. You're not leaving yet. Come back here. We'll call it even. I won't blind both your eyes. I'll just take one eye. And obviously, Lord Baratheon's just like, yeah, this ain't happening in my hall.
Right. Not here. Not under my roof. If this happened here, I would be held responsible and I would be murdered, regardless of the outcome. But I will say, looking at what Aemon has done to his missing eye piece there, with, the gem pushed in, basically, it looks like a ruby. It's pretty gruesome. Pretty awesome looking. Very definitely scary.
Yeah, it is. And anyway, Lucerys is basically like, okay, I'm getting out of here. Gets on his dragon, starts flying, and all of a sudden we see Vhagar catch up, which...
Again, I just want to point out that this scene also looked freaking amazing. with with Luke flying on his dragon, and all of a sudden you see this gigantic form like flying in the clouds, and you're just like, oh, it's about to go down.
Yeah.
And so what were you gonna say, Mike? How he caught up to him?
Yeah, and then I was like thinking about it, like
big dragon versus the tiny little one who's like, ee!
Yeah, that's very true, very true. And yeah, this is where you could tell both of them were kind of struggling to get them under control.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty epic scene here because, you have the little dragon weaving in and out of these little rock structures. And honestly, if he had just stayed in there, they would have flown away, and that would have been it. But we couldn't have that happen, could we? So at one point, though, VMAX, who is Luke's dragon, comes out and just blasts the side of Vagar's face with fire. Vagar's not very happy about that, and then decides to eat him.
And Luke.
And Aemon is just like, oh, no. Like, he didn't tell him to do that. And he realizes, too, the implications of what he did. And I do think he never wanted to kill Luke. He wanted, to get his eye back. He wanted to mess with him because he's like, Luke's this, pitiful kid, basically, compared to him. And
so I'll say this. I think that what you said about both of the dragon riders there, Luke and Aemon, not being able to fully control their dragons just throws back to the fact that these are wild animals. These are not tame little ponies. You can go, these are dangerous, dangerous creatures who have their own set of rules for themselves as well. So you have this little dragon who has no experience fighting other dragons. And
outside of probably playing.
Yeah, outside of playing, it's probably like, I'm gonna burn you. Yeah, Dracarys. Except Luke never said Dracarys. So
correct.
The Vaymax attacked without his permission, and he just showed the arrogance of this young, inexperienced dragon and young, inexperienced dragon rider in dragon-to-dragon warfare versus a trained, battle-tested dragon there in Vagar. And Vagar's like, I know how to deal with you. You want to mess with me? You're getting the jaws. And just rips them apart. Now, I will also say, no mercy. In the book, Fire and Blood, this is done on purpose. That Aemon does purposefully kill Luke. It's not a, oh no, what have I done moment. It's I'm getting revenge for my eye, little boy. Come here and meet your daddy. And he definitely does it on purpose.
Okay. I was going to ask how that tied in. So
yeah,
that makes
so
sense.
This way, I feel like probably does add a little bit more drama for the television series and stuff, even if it's not 100% faithful to the way things are in the book.
Well, and again, like you said, the book also has a narrator who is less than savory.
Very true. 2 of them.
So either way, it sets up nicely for the coming war. Because at this point, like we said at the beginning, Rhaenyra finds out, and people were like, well, how'd she find out? I know everyone's been mentioning in the book, his body parts wash ashore. Also, too, if he didn't come back within a day, and they sent ravens, they'd find out pretty fast. And we don't know if there was any little bit of a time jump there. So, but her turning around looking like that is basically this is war.
Mm-hmm. No turning back now.
You don't kill. Yeah, you killed one of my kids. When she was honestly probably going to accept their demands because that would have saved, in the long run, that would have been peaceful for the country. That would have meant, no one dying. And that was something she kept stressing. She didn't want to put everyone through this conflict, no matter how angry she was, right? Mm-hmm. But this was the straw that broke the camel's back.
And it was a big straw, killing one of her kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure the Greens are low-key excited about this.
Low-key excited, but also now when Aemon comes back, the question is, does Aemon tell what happened? Does he give them the heads up, watch out, I did something bad, Rhaenyra's coming for me? Or does he kind of try to hide it?
I feel like he would.
Would tell?
Yeah, I feel like he'd tell.
Yeah, probably.
He seems like that. He seems like that type, and he's always kind of going on about how he should be king and all this. And I feel like he would tell his mom, hey, just an FYI, this happened. Did not mean for him to die, but did, so they're probably not going to. I don't know how it is in the books, though, but
yeah. So
are they given the same offer in the books?
Yes. They're. I don't know if it's the same offer or not, but basically what happens in the books or in Fire and Blood in this particular scene is that Luke goes down to Storm's End. Aemon's there. They both, like, petition the king, or not the king, the Lord of Storm's End. And Aemon's like, I want your eye. I want to kill you. And the guy's like, I am not going to allow this to happen. I'm going to let him leave safely. But what you want to do after you guys leave is up to you. I'm not going to be held responsible for that. So he holds Aemon back enough for Luke to fly away, and then lets Aemon go. It's like, do what you want to do. Just not here. Do it somewhere else. Like I said, Aemon kills Luke on purpose in the book. But I really can't get into too much else because we're getting into the territory now where things go down and people die and all of the good stuff that comes with a TV show like House of the Dragon. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But I can also, say loose things that I know will happen or not. And that's why I don't know if it was if it was Daemon or if it was somebody else that was that third dragon that left to go. If it was Rhaenys, if it was somebody else, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So that is kind of significant then.
It could have implications, yes.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, I guess we'll find out next season, which is apparently going to be in 2 years. So this whole fantasy feast that we're now stuffed on...
We're not going to have fantasy famine.
is going to go into a bit of a fantasy famine here, because apparently Rings of Power and House of the Dragon probably won't be coming out with a new season next year. I'm assuming both will probably skip a year.
I'm also, though, assuming that Wheel of Time will, and I'm also not going to call it a famine. I said that kind of jokingly because there's lots of great fantasy stuff for us to talk about.
There is.
And some of the things that might be coming up are the Willow TV series.
Very excited about that.
The Willow movie, too.
Yes, which we will watch, yes. These are things that we're going to be covering.
Yes, that we'll be covering. What are some other good stuff? Oh, Percy Jackson.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait for that to come out, man. Shadow and Bone Season 2, which will be in 2023. We talked about doing The Witcher.
Yeah, The Witcher.
Well, obviously, Witcher Season 3, which is going to be in August, and we'll do, probably the 2 seasons, kind of an episode on each season beforehand. But we're going to do The Witcher... Is it Fire and Blood? I don't know.
Blood Origins?
Blood Origins, yes. In December, I want to say.
Yeah, so
that comes out.
We have all of that, plus whatever random fantasy books, fantasy movies, fantasy
we want to cover,
shows that are in the past that we want to cover as we come up here. So lots of stuff to rewind and talk about.
Yep, absolutely.
So before we get out of here, Mike, let's get into what your actual predictions are for Season 2. For House of the Dragon, what do you think will happen? What would you like to see? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I know we're definitely going to get some of these dragons that don't have riders. They're going to get riders. Sea Smoke, some of the ones that have hatched at Dragonstone. They'll probably try to get some of the wild dragons. But with all of that is going to come some difficulties because it's not just the dragon you're getting. You have to put a person in charge of it.
Right.
And it's not going to be kin. Except for maybe one, because one of the granddaughters does not have a dragon. So there's going to be, you're going to have to trust some people. And we know with Game of Thrones, anytime you trust someone, there's a good chance that they're going to let you down. So I'm expecting some betrayal and lots of dragon on dragon action and probably a lot of dying. I'll be interested to see, though, because like they pointed out, the Greens don't have as many dragons. And so it can't just be the Blacks just all dying all the time, right? So who in the Green camp is going to perish? Because they only have 3 dragons, correct?
Well, they have Aemon has his dragon.
Yeah, Aegon
has a dragon.
His wife, the sister, has one.
The sister has one. Then we also have their other brother who wasn't in this season, who is down in Old Town. He's going to be next season. He has a dragon.
So that's 4. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting because all of them are outside of the brother, who I'm assuming is probably just going to die. All of them are pretty major players. So they got to find someone for someone to die on their side, right? So
yeah. All I can say is that I have a sneaking suspicion that there will be deaths on both sides next season.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Very vague, very general, but it's going to happen. We all know that.
I am very excited to meet the Starks in this, hopefully next season.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with the Starks.
Yeah, me too.
Like if they're going to be made to have a bigger role because everybody knows the name from Game of Thrones, or if they're going to stick to what they do in the book or not.
Oh, okay, so they don't have much of a role in the book then?
I'll say they aren't like a major player, but they are involved.
Well, I think most of these houses wouldn't have a lot of involvement because, like Damon says, this is really, and like they said, it doesn't matter about men. It's all about the dragons.
Right.
So that's where I think is going to be really interesting, is that this is really just going to be a war of dragons.
So I'll say this because I think this is kind of a fun little teaser there. A term that you might see in season 2 is, or leading up to season 2, are dragon seeds.
Okay. So people with, I'm just going off and assuming that this is people who have Targaryen blood in some way, shape, or form, because there is probably quite a few people who have Targaryen blood, which means they could be dragon riders. Because that's something that all dragon riders have to have, correct? All dragon riders have to have like Targaryen blood.
All known dragon riders that we've seen in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon have some amount of Targaryen blood.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll see. That's it for me, though.
All right. Well, here's to hoping that 2024 comes fast for this part here. I know there's lots of great stuff going on in between, like we talked about, but I honestly, I can't believe that we're going to have to wait 2 years for Rings of Power and House of the Dragon.
No.
Oh, quick update though. Good news on the Winds of Winter front, I think. So George R.R. Martin
3/4
came out and said he is 3/4 of the way done with Winds of Winter. But he did go on to say that every time he sits down to write, the book gets longer in his mind as well. So we'll see what that actually translates into, if it will come out before 2024 or not. God, I hope so.
So let's just put this in perspective. How long has Winds of the Winter been in the works?
Over a decade.
Okay, so if it's 3/4 of the way done now, give it another 8 years, it should be completed, right?
Yeah.
That's just quick math.
I honestly don't want to put any more pressure on George than he already has, because you watch this video interview with him, and as he's all cheery and everything like he always is, and then as soon as he gets the question about give us an update on Winds of Winter, you see him instantly get more and more stressed and everything. And I think it's because he's feeling the pressure. Everybody's been after him for a long time about this. And it's, it's not something that has gone the way that he would have planned. So yeah, Dance of Dragons, the last book that was published in the Song of Ice and Fire series, came out in 2011.
Wow.
So it's been 11 years.
Okay, so I take back my 8-year comment. It'd be about 4 or 5 years. So
yeah. Well, 2 years would get us to 2024. Anyways, that's all we got for you today. We hope you all enjoyed House of the Dragon. Mike, what are your final thoughts? What are your thoughts on the first season? How would you like it?
I really liked it. I know we've compared it slightly to Rings of Power, but this definitely blew Rings of Power out of the water in terms of just like character development, the visuals and stuff. Like, while everything was beautiful in Rings of Power, and I will take this in my grave, that this show, House of the Dragon, is too dark by quite a bit. I will say that visually, like the dragons and everything else, and the costumes and the acting, it's just been killer. Matt Smith, this is probably his best role ever. And I think all the actors have really killed it, pun intended for some. But yeah, I do think it's hard to kind of compare the two in terms of story, because Rings of Power is trying to do this huge, massive story, whereas House of the Dragon is a very focused story. It's
very true.
Rings of Power is trying to do world building and all this, and House of the Dragon doesn't have to do that, because Game of Thrones really built that entire world. And yeah,
I will say that it's a different world we're in right now than what it was in Game of Thrones, but all in all, I couldn't agree more with what you said about everything. I really enjoyed House of the Dragon. I am very excited that we're back in the world of Ice and Fire, back in Westeros, and it's a positive experience. The show's been generally well received by everybody, which is great. Like, I don't know anyone who's watched a show and like, oh, I don't like it, it's crap. Like, you know, comparatively to season 8 or of Game of Thrones or whatever, but
which
yeah. Has been panned a little bit, but I feel like it's a great return to form and a great revitalization of this World of Ice and Fire property, intellectual property that George R. R. Martin's created. Definitely enjoying it. I can't wait for season 2. Looking forward to more World of Ice and Fire shows that may or may not happen, like Snow.
I hope that one happens.
I hope it happens too. I'm excited to see what that actually
And
entails.
I'd really like to see one that focuses on old Valyria.
That would be really cool. Very unexplored, but that could be very interesting.
Also, it'd be fun to get one on the Dorne.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could go, so many places you could go for this world.
You could just do a whole show on different houses.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of this world. I love this world. I am excited for more of it. But that's all we got this time, and we're actually getting out of here now. So with all of that being said, we will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
Chomp.